Hi, this is Shane Starr, and yes, that is a real tree behind me. Um, Beautiful day in South Orange County in Southern California, and what a great day to talk about introverted sensing, my favorite function. Um, so, I've been working on this series behind the scenes for quite a while. Even if only a few people are going to be watching it, I'm excited to share my findings with the people who interact with me on this channel. And just to reiterate, this is a unique series where I'm combining my passion for typology with my formal education and experience in philosophy to help my viewers live their best life. And we're going to do that by targeting specific cognitive functions and Enneagram fixations after we're done with the functions. And this will all be for improvement using philosophical masterpieces as roadmaps for pointing us towards self-realization and self-improvement in these realms. So here's our method. I've established in previous videos that the best functions to target in MBTI terms are the third, the fourth, and the eighth functions. In Socionics, they have different numbers, but these are the mobilizing, suggestive, and role elements. Okay, I'm going to leave it up to you to see, which function or element or Enneagram fixation when we get to that. That you want to focus on to give you the most value for your efforts. And of course, you can take the holistic approach of gaining actionable knowledge for each one. Okay, so today's function is SI, Introverted Sensing. And even though I've done a video on this before, it wasn't with the aims of self-improvement. So before we get into that, I want to define the function as I understand it, because that might be a little bit different from what you've heard from other people. And my approach is a holistic one. What I do is I take the best sources from MBTI and Socionics, I kind of gather them together, and I throw out everything that doesn't fit within like a Venn diagram model. In other words, I take the overlap and cut the rest off. Okay, and then that gives us a pretty good understanding of what each function is in its pure form that the greatest number of people will be able to relate to. So what is introverted sensing, SI? It is a subjective function, and it's odd in this way because it doesn't seem like one when we think about it. Sensing the here and now, tangible things, empirical knowledge. But it's subjective because it's not about the things, it's about your impressions of the things. And that's why, in Socionics, they deem it an irrational function and have the whole J P switch going on with those. But this video is not really about that. To get back to my point, what it is instead of what it isn't. It's a subjective function that prioritizes the meaning and, for lack of a better word, feeling associated with internal sensations over objective external data. So think about that for a moment. It's looking at something like this coffee mug, or the leaves on these plants, or the blades on the grass. It's really zeroing in, focusing on a particular thing and getting an impression from that thing. And people with high SI, like I would count myself being among, you get a feeling. It's almost like how some people say that sounds can be associated with colors, and some people go, yeah, you're right. And then other people would say that sounds absurd. In the same way, high SI users can associate good, pleasant feelings and bad, unpleasant feelings with average, seemingly non-expressive objects, and certain things can make you feel good or bad. It's almost like sensory sensitivity, you know. But coming back to Earth for a second, the way this works is by having such particular sensitivities to different external objects, things, people, even. It it gets us in a mode of reacting to our own reactions to those things. So what this does, we start associating things with feelings, and when we do that, that's how memory becomes a part of SI. Even though it's not explicitly mentioned in Socionics theory, it is in MBTI theory. And I'm thinking, how does the relationship of people to things have any reference to memory? And that's because if you have strong SI, you get strong impressions from things, and then that becomes relatable when you see something else that's the same or similar. That gives you the same impression, and then you start linking those impressions, thus memory. So when you see, something like a plant, like I'm looking at right now, blowing in the wind, and I always associate that with the movie Gladiator, for instance, and then I think about a reference to the earth and how life is a matter of feeling and touching things and experiencing nature and such. Whenever I see a plant or a flower blowing in the wind, it leads me to that series of steps somehow in a split instant. It happens in less than a second, but it's always there. And it's kind of like an inside look at introverted sensing. So we connect our experiences to past experiences and lessons, and that helps us guide our current behavior. Now, because of this, we value consistency, predictability, and when we think about work and society, people with high SI are going to be the ones who appreciate standardization, structure, rules. I know I'm dangerously stepping towards TI and Socionics, but you can be close without being there. This is SI I'm talking about. So yeah, what an SI person values is consistency, predictability, and in a word, it's about comfort. I would think of SI words being comfort, utility, pleasure, health, relaxation, maintenance. Just like everything's okay. I have enough coffee in my cup, all is well. I have enough time before lunch ends, things are good. And opposed to this, with low SI, we would be looking at pain, stress, illness, discomfort, inconvenience, ugliness, disharmony, anxiety. SI is the opposite of anxiety. When you're enjoying it and living SI to its fullest experience in a good way, not in a bad way, it's comfort and pleasure, really, a sense of well-being. So this video isn't for people with high SI, it's for people who want to improve their SI. So what are some examples of people who struggle with SI? I would say the foremost thing that comes to mind is a neglect of one's health, both short-term and long-term health. They have little patience for detail in light of long-term goals or pursuits. It's like, yeah, I know I'm sick, but this job has to get done. I know that I should read through this contract, but I just want to get it over with. I know that I need to get my car registration, but I'm sick of waiting in this line, so I'm just going to go put it off and do it later. It also would relate to a lack of awareness of comfort or relaxation, and that includes sleep. I notice people with low SI don't have very good sleeping habits, and they don't have they don't have very good habits, period. They don't live by habits, which isn't to say they're spontaneous. They just don't have a routine. And I don't know, like for me, that's just weird. Like I need a routine. The more routinized my life is, the more comfortable I am, and the better I feel. Um, but back to low SI, I think there's a sort of lack of life skill when it comes to practical matters. I'm thinking of like CEOs at companies I've worked for who don't know how to properly attach a document to an email, but yet they're making $1 million a year. You know, they don't have time for things like us peasant worker bees have, you know, things like that, you know. I would extend that to things like contracts, applications, taxes, required forms, again, waiting in line, anything having to do with the doctor or dentist, court, anything like that is just, if you can't handle that, I bet you have low SI. Which isn't to say the rest of us enjoy that. You know, I don't like waiting in line either, but I can find different things to do when I'm in line that take up my time and energy, and I'm okay with it, you know. So how does this link up with philosophy? And I have in front of me one of my favorite books, Martin Heidegger's Being in Time. I did my master's dissertation on this, and it was called Black Celebration. You'll know the reason why when I get to the end of this. I mean, I'm a Depeche Mode fanatic, but besides that, it's appropriate for this work. And a little bit about Martin Heidegger. His dates are 1889 to 1976. He, at his prime time of working capacity was probably during and just after World War II. So being German, working, you know, through World War II, that already makes him a controversial figure in and of itself. He's one of the great existentialists, and you know, he combined two somewhat polemic but similar figures, Kierkegaard and Nietzsche. And I remember in a typing with World Socionics Society, I think he thought I had bad TI because I could like both Kierkegaard and Nietzsche. One is a Christian in the most strong sense of the word. The other is an atheist. So he didn't see the logic in that. And what's funny is that those two figures are historically intertwined, and they have a lot more in common than meets the eye. They're not so much polemic. They take the same general feeling, and one takes it in one direction, one takes it in another, but they're two different sides of the same coin, to really go beyond that. And Martin Heidegger really, his thought captures, I think, in some ways the best of both of those thinkers. And he's known for something called phenomenology, which is an examination of experience, which again sounds similar to our definition of SI, our impressions of our sensory experiences. So again, phenomenology is the awareness of phenomenon free of outside influences or assumptions. It's just the individual in his or her experiences with the objects that they see and experience in real time. So Martin Heidegger's main work is called Being in Time. I have it right here. It really is a philosophical masterpiece, and what it does is it seeks to address the fundamental question of the meaning of being or existence. Predictably, he finds his answer in a person's unique relation to time. So being in time, much like in Einstein's theory, but in a different way, being in time are ultimately connected. You can't have either without the other. So when we think of our existence, we have to think of it within the framework of time, not through some lofty, abstract concept, but by appeal to the immediate, everyday experiences of his readers. To put it in Heidegger's own words, I'm going to pull this out real quick. He sought to appeal to the immediate and everyday abstract experiences, not abstract, rather, immediate everyday experiences, their work, people's moods, their social life. These are things typically ignored by philosophy. And he thinks through a radical reorientation, through thinking and meditating upon death, one can find greater meaning in life. Okay, so basically what he says is that most of us just go through the motions, how we live. We don't really think about our experiences. Think of the notion of using your brakes in a car, or turning a doorknob when you open a door to enter into a room or into a home. You're not really thinking. You're doing these things unconsciously. Not unconsciously like your heart beating, but unconsciously as in, again, going through the motions. You're not really living your life. You're not really doing anything. And Heidegger would call this inauthentic ways of being. Even though we can't always give meaning to every little thing we do, he thinks we err so much on the other side that we would do better to improve ourselves going the other way. So when we reconfigure our attitudes as a being toward death, in Heidegger's words, that makes us more aware of time, as in not just time in the general long-term sense of the word, but time as in every single moment of our being. And when we do this, we experience each moment to the fullest. Think of rushing through a meal versus savoring every little taste. And again, this should remind you of SI, maybe SE's just gobbling up the food and SI is just tasting every little bit of flavor and making the fullest of your experience in each moment. And Heidegger thinks, again, that we do that through reorienting our lives in a being towards death attitude, which makes us appreciate the moment more, which makes us focus on the moment more. And he calls this word care. I know it's not a big, deep thing, So in other words, when we think about death, we focus on life more, and we call this care. And this is the meaning of authentic existence. To put it in Heidegger's words, straight out of his own book, he says that being towards death belongs primordially and essentially to Dasein, that's his name for humans, being. Then it must be exhibitable in everydayness, even if in some ways we have to live inauthentically. Being towards death must be a reorientation in one's attitude of care towards its everydayness, towards regular things. So the way we care about the big moments in life, we have to care but in those little moments. It's like if you want to do the right thing on the spot, you have to practice. You have to do the right thing in practice, which will help you do the right thing on the spot. So, these meaningless moments that make up our day ultimately make up the majority of our lives. And Heidegger thinks most of us miss that. And I think Heidegger's right on this count. So I think with that little quote, we would try to notice the important things in life that we routinely miss. Things that maybe go beyond words sometimes, revealed by nature, moments of kindness, moments of beauty we see in the world, beauty in art, beauty in objects, the way coffee feels when you sip it and you feel it. It tastes really good. I love coffee. I think the key here to experience SI in the fullest is to start being more aware of your surroundings and surround yourself with things that give you pleasure. I had a quote from Brad Pitt that I found really meaningful. He said, "The older I get, the less stuff I take that I don't want to deal with." He used a different word that I don't like to use in my videos, but you know, the less time we have, the more we'll make out of each moment. And there's no reason not to start now. You know, you don't have to wait till later. So to practice your SI, take a greater appreciation for the little things. These things end up being the most precious things, I think, at the end of our lives. So what are some changes that we can make in our routines going forward? In other words, practice. How can we make our SI better if we have it in a low spot? I would say be mindful and aware of what goes in and out of your world, the music you're listening to, the smells that you surround yourself with or that you put up with, your preferences. You know, make the necessary adjustments to maximize your comfort, pleasure, and sense of well-being. These might include habits that make you look weird sometimes. For instance, like wearing a tie every day to work, the same color tie, and even when your boss keeps telling you you don't need to wear a tie, if it makes you feel good and you like it, go ahead and do it. You don't have to listen to the they, which is another word of Heidegger's. He said the bigger society is the they, and they'll keep you in that inauthentic lifestyle. And he said to be authentic, it doesn't mean to go out and be a weirdo, but go ahead and beat to the march of your own drum. You know, go ahead and wear a tie if you want, or don't wear a tie if you don't want to. Choose a job or partner. Really, I mean, it sounds so like, of course, but pick people and things around you based on how they make you feel, as opposed to complicated, logical, or you know, even moral considerations. Go by what feels the best and trust your impressions. You know, if you get a bad feeling about a color or a smell or even a person, listen to it and surround yourself by things that make you feel good. If you have any other examples in the comments, I know I'm probably leaving stuff out. You know, I'll leave one more little bonus. How oftentimes do we shop for food and just for the sake of variety or something else, we add things into our repertoire that we already know we don't really like? It's not really our favorite, but we are afraid to get the thing we like, just everything of that. Go ahead and get everything you like. Eat it till you get sick of it, then move on to something new. You know, do what makes you feel good, what gives you peace, what gives you pleasure, what makes you happy. That's how to improve your SI. That's all I got for today. Share your own suggestions in the comments. Tomorrow or the next day, we're going to do SE, and we're going to be looking at Jean-Paul Sartre's existentialism, and that'll be fun. I already have it finished, I just haven't presented it here yet, but we'll be putting that one out next. Anyway, that's all I have for today. Peace out.